Okay. Hi everybody. I'm again behind my wok in Chiang Mai. It's the 4th day of tea making today, and I'm happy today to have the first batch of gusu. This is from Guangjing Garden, the garden managed by our uncle. So we have 2 gusu gardens tonight. One is Guangjing and the other is Noguan, our own garden. And today is a bit special actually because a TV crew is here. A TV crew from Yunnan TV is here. Because as you know, like Chiang Mai is a candidate to the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and this year they are applying officially. And so, well, if they are successful, it will mean that Chiang Mai will be a World Heritage Site. And so this is why there's more promotion about Chiang Mai than usual this year. But you could say that in the world of pu-erh tea, Chiang Mai has always been quite in the spotlight. Like if you look at the pu-erh tea magazine, it's a monthly magazine that talks about pu-erh tea. Basically, almost every month you will have articles about Chiang Mai. So, yeah, you can say that Chiang Mai is quite a hot spot for tourism. And there are reasons for this. There are reasons like, well, it's quite a beautiful place. You have the largest ancient tea gardens in the world, you could say. Still a pretty good tea, so that's why it attracts many tourists. But anyway, so the TV crew, whom I've spent the whole day with, asked me to make another YouTube video because as part of their documentary they want to see how I proceed when I make these YouTube videos. And so I thought I have a few subjects in mind, but I think I haven't thought about them enough to create a video on these subjects. So I think I'm going to make it simple today. I'm just going to explain again how to process pu-erh tea. I did this video 3 years ago, but I think it's always cool to have a reminder. So now you can see that I've been cooking this tea for about 3 minutes. And when I put the tea in the woks, the leaves were dry and they were somewhat, they were dry. I think that's the most important. And they were very green. And now you can see that we start having some steam forming up that comes from my batch of leaves. And I would say if you want to understand pu-erh tea processing, it's all about fire and the management of water, okay? The shaching, at its most basic, one of the purposes of the shaching is to dry the leaves. It means that you will have a lower water content in the leaves after the shaching. It will, during that shaching session, we will evaporate about 30% of the water that was originally in the tea leaves. But we have to manage how this water evaporates through the shaching. The method we like to use in Chiang Mai, at least for our own tea, for the farmer leaf tea, is a start at high temperature, and then once the leaves have shrunk, then you take out the fire, or more ideally you plan the fire in advance so that it will just die down midway. So we start at high temperature for about 6 to 8 minutes. At that point the leaves will have shrunk. It's just like when cooking vegetables. And after that we have a low wok temperature and we try to preserve some steam inside the batch in order to have the tea partially cooked with the heat of the wok and partially cooked with steam. And that's at low temperature, and it usually takes 12 to 15 minutes. So these days I've been frying tea, each batch, like 8 kilo batch, for about 23 minutes, give or take 2 minutes, I would say. And this has been fairly consistent. Now that we have some gushu batch, I feel like I want to give it a bit more time. Because, well, it seems that the water in the gushu is quite different. Maybe it's just a matter of maturity of the leaves. Like we're having the gushu now, and it's very tender material, while the Shanghai we had a couple of days ago tended to be more mature, and therefore would not be able to be cooked for such a long time. Well, it makes sense. If the leaves are more tender, you have more water in them, so you can cook them for a longer time. You can let the water evaporate for a longer time. So now you can see that I'm about 5 minutes, 6 minutes in. Yeah, if I look at my recorder, it says 6:40. So I will still give them maybe 2 more minutes for them to shrink, and I can feel that the wok is pretty hot now. Let me just take a look at the fire. Yeah, now we're having a medium fire, and I think that's perfect just to finish the shrinking step, the first step of the shaching. If after 2 minutes we still have that fire, I will take out one of the logs, so that we make sure we have mostly embers and maybe only small flames. Because for the second step of the shaching, I don't want to have too high a wok temperature, because I don't want to flip the tea leaves too much. The problem is, every time you flip the leaves, you have steam evaporating, as you can see here. And the thing is, I want to preserve some water content in the leaves up until the end of the shaching. And even at the end of the shaching, I don't want the leaves to be too dry. Because if the leaves are too dry at the end of the shaching, you'll be getting green tea, basically. So green tea usually is both cooked and rolled at the same time. And that's in order to help the water flow out of the leaf, and that will make sure that you get that strong shaching, and at the end of this shaching your leaves will be almost dry, and then you just finish the drying with hot air. But you don't want that when you're making pu-erh tea. You want to keep the leaves wet, because you want to keep some enzymes active in the pu-erh tea leaves. Okay, so in order to keep the enzymes active, you don't want the tea leaves to go too high in temperature. Because here my wok might be at 200 degrees Celsius, but because tea has water, and that energy that goes into the leaves is actually captured by water evaporating, the leaves are not at the same temperature as the iron here. Let me just take my thermometer, and I will just tell you something. The bottom of my wok now is at 190 degrees. So I would consider that as a low temperature. High temperature would be 250 degrees Celsius. Now if I measure the leaves, 67 degrees. Why the temperature difference? 190 degrees on the iron, 67 degrees on the leaf. It's because of evaporation. Each time steam is built, some energy is captured, some energy is transferred into the steam. Okay? Now the problem is, the drier your leaf, the less steam will be produced, and the temperature inside on the surface of the leaf will increase. And so it's not sudden. It's not like you get steam and a constant temperature up until a point when you get no steam at all, and then your leaves will burn. It doesn't work like that. It's well, I guess it's a linear progress. Like the water in the leaf is harder and harder to extract. So in order to extract it, you could say the leaf temperature will increase, and only then will that water inside become steam. So the less water you have in the leaf, the higher the temperature of the leaf. And since we don't want to kill all the enzymes in the leaf, we don't want a high temperature, and so we want a certain water content. We don't want to go below a certain water content in the leaf. Yes, so here I just told you basically the difference between the green tea shaching and the pu-erh tea shaching. It's not really a matter of wok temperature, it's mainly a matter of how dry you will cook the leaves. For pu-erh tea, you don't want to cook them too dry. So this is why now we use a fairly low temperature. Let me check the fire again. Yeah. We still had a medium fire, so I took out one of the logs, and probably in 2 minutes we will get a decrease in temperature. And so the moves when you do the shaching, people who don't understand shaching think that it's the mastery, like the master has great moves, special moves. But really the moves don't matter too much. They're just here for efficiency. It means that if you have inefficient moves, like big moves, then you're going to get tired quite quickly, and you won't be able to go through your night of shaching. Like today I probably have 10 to 12 batches to make, so I want to make sure that I keep my energy. So that's why I make quite lazy moves. But the moves don't really matter when it comes to the quality of the tea. What matters really is how you control the evaporation of the water. So you can see that almost since the beginning of the shaching here, I've just been doing some quite small moves. Now, if I open up the leaves like this, you see all the steam evaporating. I still want to keep the steam in at this time. As long as there's not too much steam coming out of your bowl, you don't really need to open up. Now, of course, that's a style. Some people like to make pretty dry tea, which means that every time they shuffle the tea, they want to let all the water, the steam, they want to let go of all the steam. I think, in my opinion, the problem with this processing is you cannot fully cook the leaves. In order to fully cook the leaves, you still have to rely on steam, because if you always let the steam evaporate, then after maybe 15 minutes, you'll be out of water in the leaves. And if you keep them in the wok, well, they will turn into green tea. They will just be too dry. But I want to give more than 15 minutes for my shaching. In Jingmaya, I like to have this shaching between 20 and 30 minutes, really depending on the material. So now, the shuffling of the leaves, So like I say, every time you shuffle the leaves, you let some steam. You let out some steam. Okay, so following my method, you don't really want to shuffle it too much. But you could ask, why do you have to shuffle it then? Well, it's mainly to avoid the leaves burning. The wok is still 200 degrees Celsius hot. If you leave them for 15 seconds, eventually for sure you will have burnt leaves, and you will smell that in the air very quickly, just like when you let the dishes burn in your pot. So that's why I shuffle the leaves. And of course I still want to let some steam out, because now the problem is, if you never let the steam out, if you have too much steaming and not enough frying, well, you will have a kind of Japanese green tea. At least you will have that kind of taste. You will also have a muddy soup, a soup that's not very clear. Now, it's not a huge problem, but yeah, it's not a huge problem. But I guess the Japanese green tea taste is a problem. You won't have that right pu-erh tea characteristic. Now, I would say with this method, we don't make the most fragrant pu-erh teas, but I believe these teas have better mouthfeel. They feel more lively in the mouth. So, yeah. Anyway, that's what we like. And when I source tea, I tend to like this kind of processing. So I wouldn't say that all of the teas on our website are processed in this way, but if I have the choice, for most of the areas, I think I will choose this kind of processing. Now, some areas come with specific traits. You know, for example, if you look at Iwu, you often get a lot of undercooked teas in Iwu. Well, it turns out that after a few years of aging, these teas are actually pretty good. Yeah, if you go to Laomana, generally they like to have a very heavily cooked tea. They will cook it for a long time. Usually in Linsang, they will also have quite short shaching. Except Mongku, I'm talking more about Bandung area, Xigui, this kind of taste profile. But of course that's generalities, and it doesn't apply to each and every farmer and tea factory in those areas. And I would say in Jingmai, a few people share our method. So this is more of a Monghai stuff, I would say. That kind of half steaming and half frying, and a lot of other people like to just cook it very dry. So now it's been almost 20 minutes, I feel, and I feel you can still get more from this gushu batch. My wok is not too hot, so I don't need to flip the tea too often. Just enough so that the leaves don't burn. And it's important to look at the leaves. And if you look at one of those early leaves, you can see quite a difference in color. They turned yellow. The more you cook the leaves, the more yellow they are, and that's because heat destroys chlorophyll, and plants are green just because of chlorophyll. So now I can see that my tea is starting to dry, and I see this by looking at the buds. You can see that the buds tend to be, they have a white shine. So the buds get white and the leaves get dark. And you can also listen to the friction of the leaves with the wok wall. The higher the pitch, the drier the tea. Now I would say, if you really want to understand the Shaching on a theoretical from a theoretical perspective, I'd recommend you check my video on the physics of the Shaching. That's a video I made maybe 2 years ago. If you're into physics, that I'm sure you will like that. Oh, it's stuff I learned at university, you know, with the heat transfers and trying to understand what energy is. A problem often is that people get focused on the wok temperature at the beginning of the session, but actually what matters more than the wok temperature is the intensity of the fire. Yeah. Now if you make that physics in your mind, you will understand that the fire releases energy, and that will be transferred to the wok, and the temperature of the wok is actually the stock of energy that's in the wok, and that's again transferred to the leaves. And at each step of the transfer, it's not really a linear stuff. It would be like a faucet analogy. Yeah, if you want to understand half of physics, just check the faucet analogy maybe on Wikipedia and YouTube, because a lot of the physical phenomenon work like this. That's very interesting. So it says 22 minutes on my recorder. I think I might want to make it just a little bit more, and my camera can cut at any time because I can see that I'm running out of battery. But I still want to give it maybe 2 minutes more. Now I see it's getting dry, and that's quite the critical step, you know. It's a bit like when you're making spaghetti. If you're cooking spaghetti or frying rice or things, the end is very crucial, you know, because if you miss by 30 seconds, then you won't get really the taste that you want. And tea is quite the same, you could say. So that might be the moment when you need the most focus on the tea, I think. So I'm gonna keep flipping it there for maybe 1 or 2 minutes more. This was a fairly short session, I think, because the start was very intense. We had a very strong fire at the start, and the TV crew needed to set up their camera, so I let the wok heat up. So I started at 300 degrees on the wok. It's not a problem as long as you shuffle the leaves fast enough so that they don't burn. But it just means that when you put the leaves in the wok, you get that release of energy, that heat transfer from the wok to the leaves. And so you have to be fast, and you know that it's gonna accelerate the cooking in the early stage. So I think I'm about done now. Yeah, you get that good cooked leaf smell. There's a special, very understated fragrance that comes out when your tea is ready. So I'm gonna end the session now. Let the tea cool down, and then we'll go to the rolling. So thank you for watching, and see you again soon. Bye bye.